Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about how to set up a tortoise table for a Mediterranean tortoise. Now Mediterranean tortoises include Hermans, Horsefields or Russian tortoises, and I'm only going to be talking about these because desert tortoises have completely different requirements to kind of jungle tortoises, so that's what I'm going to be going into. So I'm always going to advise against a vivarium because they don't really provide the right air circulation, which can cause respiratory problems in tortoises, including runny nose syndrome. It's also a really good environment for moulds and funguses to grow, which can cause shell infections. And also in a glass enclosure, it's very difficult to get a variation in temperature, and desert tortoises really need that. They need their basking temperature and then a cooler temperature as well, so they can regulate their temperature by choosing which area they go into. Also, vivariums tend to be very small for the price. There's not much floor space, and tortoises do need a lot of space. They need lots of exercise to reduce the risk of respiratory and bone development problems. And I know Sheldon's enclosure isn't huge at the moment, but he is still a juvenile, so as he gets bigger I will be upgrading his tortoise table. Now I'm going to be talking about substrates, and the substrate you choose is really, really important. When I first was looking into getting a tortoise, I did lots and lots of research on the best substrate for his species, and I found that it was a mixture of play sand and topsoil, about half and half, and they also need it about 3 inches deep so they can dig to regulate their temperature, and that's also why I really advise against heat mats, because tortoises, when they get too hot, dig down to try and cool themselves down, and obviously if there's a heat mat there, when they're digging they're getting hotter and it really confuses them. So you want to try and avoid beddings like hemp bark, reptile sand and wood chips, because these tend to be associated with deaths due to the tortoise ingesting them and it kind of getting stuck in their systems, or toxicity. Some of them, as they heat up under the lamp, kind of release toxic fumes, so you really want to avoid things like that. So when it comes to putting things in your tortoise enclosure, you want to try and make it quite natural and stimulating for the tortoise. So you want places for them to hide, and this also allows the creation of appropriate microclimates. And you also want decorations, some plants and things like that, so they can it just makes it look a lot more natural for them and it's a lot more fun for them. I know Sheldon really, really likes climbing, so I give him some of those kind of logs and things that he can climb up on, but you also need to be careful that they're not going to fall and end up on their backs, because especially young tortoises, if they end up on their back near their light, it can be really, really damaging in quite a short amount of time. And also, I'm not too sure how accurate this is, but I've heard that when tortoises go on their backs they can't breathe properly, but I know just generally it's not very healthy for them to be on their backs. Okay, so over your tortoise enclosure you'll need some heat and light. So I've opted for a basking heat lamp and a UVB bulb. You can get UV heat lamps which are both in one, and I used to have this. I had the Power Sun and it does last quite a long time, but the bulb that I had was about £80, so it was very, very expensive. So you need to be careful when you're buying reptile basking bulbs, because they don't normally emit any UVB rays, so you do need to really check the packet when you're buying it, because tortoises really do need UVB to make vitamin D3. So when you're putting your light in your enclosure, you want it to be about 30 to 45 centimetres above where they're going to be basking, and it should be between 32 and 35 degrees Celsius under their light. And then the temperature sort of out of their basking area, just in the background, should be kept at about 24 degrees Celsius. So the Tortoise Trust recommends that tortoises should have about 14 hours of light a day, as long as the room that you keep your tortoise in isn't cold. then you won't need any at night. But this is different for tropical tortoises. This only applies to Mediterranean tortoises. So water is really, really important as well. And I've heard a lot of myths going around that tortoises don't need to drink because they get it all from their food, but this isn't true. In the wild, they would go along and they would drink from puddles and they would soak themselves in puddles, and they don't get all of the water that they need from plants. They do need fresh water at all times, so they can drink, they can soak themselves, and also if they get too hot they can cool down quickly. And they should also be soaked about 2 times a week in shallow water, but I've got a video on that you can always check out if you want to know more about that. But it is really important that they stay hydrated to avoid kidney damage and bladder stones forming. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about their diet, but I do have a video on this if you want to know more about it in more detail. But as a general rule, their diet should be high in fibre, high in calcium, low in protein, low in fat, low in carbohydrate and low in sugar. And I'd really, really recommend avoiding the complete tortoise diets that you can buy from pet shops that you soak or feed to them dry or anything like that, because these are frequently associated with unnatural rates of growth. It's called pyramiding, when their shell goes all bumpy on the scoots, and it's also associated with poor bone density. So I'd really highly recommend avoiding them and only feeding them a fresh diet. And I would also recommend supplementing it with phosphorus-free calcium and vitamin D3 supplements. And how much to give them depends on the age of your tortoise. Younger tortoises need it on pretty much every meal, but with adult tortoises they only need it probably 3 or 4 times a week. But I give it to Sheldon on most of his meals because he is still quite young, he's still growing. So I think that's pretty much it, and if you've got any questions you can always let me know, and check out my other tortoise videos because I've done quite a lot of different ones recently, and hopefully this has helped with your Mediterranean tortoise. It's not going to be very helpful if you've got a different species like a jungle tortoise or anything like that, but the Tortoise Trust website is really, really helpful. They've got loads of care sheets on pretty much every type of tortoise, so I'd really recommend checking that out as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate and subscribe. Hop along to our Facebook page so you can keep up to date as we post competitions where you can win loads of prizes for your pets. See you soon!